All right. Good evening. My name is Teigha VanHester, and I'm an assistant professor of race, gender, and sexuality studies at Butler University. And it is my distinct honor to welcome you to our inaugural RGSS Feminist Night School final night of the series entitled Feminisms at the Borders, History, Solidarity, and Palestine. The RGSS Night School is committed to mobilizing social justice work, literacies, and activism beyond the university. As RGSS scholar activists, we strive to amplify work being done to achieve liberation, sovereignty, and justice. We believe in education, community, solidarity, and resistance. They are all essential in our pursuits of freedom. We believe that healing, truth, and joy serve as our guiding frameworks, and we believe in the power of hope and humanity over hatred and harm. Butler's Race, Gender, and Sexuality Studies program is an interdisciplinary degree that houses both majors and minors. It is founded on the premise that gender, sexuality, class, race, and other markers of difference are historical and intersectioning constructs affecting all peoples. The program has over 30 faculty affiliates and offers students a unique opportunity to question and challenge the power structures that perpetuate privilege and inequality, providing a formal setting for students to interrogate identity and agency locally and globally across space and time. No work in RGSS is complete in isolation. The RGSS Feminist Night School would not have been possible without the fierce solidarity of my comrades, Dr. Mira, Assaf, Kafantaris, and Dr. Charlene Fletcher. Dr. Fletcher and Dr. Assaf Kafantaris and I had our first meeting regarding this night school October 28th. And it would not have been possible without the perseverance and resilience of these amazing scholar activists. As junior faculty, we would not have been able to host the night school without the fierce commitment and unwavering support of the following people. We'd first like to thank Dr. Terry Carney for her guidance as the RGSS program director, as well as the support of the RGSS steering committee. We are grateful for the advocacy for academic freedom put forth by Dean J. Howard and Associate Dean Elise Edwards. The series would not be possible without the incomparable coordination of Mira Beth Peretta. Thank you for all that you do. And finally, the host of the night school would like one more time to dedicate its inception, and this inaugural series to Dr. Terry Jett, whose mentorship, guidance, and care have created this space for us. Tonight, unlike the other nights, is kind of a roundtable wrap up. So we're looking at about 45 minutes to an hour of discussion. We are committed to having Q&A throughout this time. So it is open and you can ask your questions as they come to you following a brief presentation by Dr. Fletcher. You can also utilize that Q&A function if you have questions regarding any of the tech that I guess you have to use while doing this. If you are unable to stay, no worries. The Night School series is being recorded. We will send out the recordings of these sessions along with resources that are discussed throughout and some other upcoming events hosted by RGSS. We got some great activities coming up for JVP and SJP that we will share out as well if you're ready to get engaged. And really, we hope that you can participate in the optional survey that's provided regarding your experience at the Feminist Night School. Tonight's roundtable session was skillfully and passionately curated by one of my favorite people, Dr. Charlene Fletcher, Assistant Professor of History at Butler University. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Fletcher to steward us into our final night of the RGSS Feminist Night School, Feminism at the Border, History, Solidarity, and Palestine.
Good evening, friends. Good evening. Again, welcome to the final night of the inaugural RGSS Feminist Night School. We hope you have enjoyed the sessions this week. And tonight, as Dr. VanHester just said, it's a bit different because this is a roundtable. And our roundtable allows us to reflect and strengthen the connections that we've made over the past 2 days. We will have an opportunity to tackle unanswered questions from the 2 previous evenings. So if you had a question we couldn't get to, we can get to it today. But this is open, so you don't have to wait until I'm done talking. Drop your questions in the Q&A. But in addition to those questions, we will also cover and suggest next steps and best practices for engaging social justice work for Palestine, but also any injustices that you find them in the world, because there are plenty. So I'm going to share my screen if Zoom allows me. Let's see. Okay, share screen. Yay, did it work? Can you see it? Can you still see it? Can't see it no more?
You can see it. It's still just on the Canva.
Oh, Canva gets on my nerves. Okay, well there, you see Audre Lorde in all of her glory. It's important when we are doing social justice work that we care for ourselves, and I know that this evening we will discuss self-care, but this is one of my favorite quotes by one of my favorite human beings, Audre Lorde. Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. On October 7th, Palestinians were faced with the sounds of explosions yet again. News outlets around the world reported that Hamas had engaged in a terrorist attack against Israel. And since that day, we as a global community have grappled with the facts of the genocide occurring within Palestine. Just today, Al Arabiya, an Arab news outlet, reported that 26,751 Palestinians have been killed since October 7th. And the Times of Israel reported just yesterday that not only have we witnessed an increase in anti-Semitism, we've also had anti-Muslim and anti-Palestinian discrimination in the US increase 180% since October 7th. Many of us turn on the news and hear varying perspectives of what's happening. And as many of you pointed out in the past two evenings in the Q&A, the information that you may glean often sets the story as beginning on October 7th, 2023. But we know this history extends far beyond the past few months. But how we remember or recall certain events may not always connect properly with history. And so it raises the question, what is history and what is memory? And how does that impact our social justice work? As a historian, I am a historian of the 19th century US South, specifically the African-American experiences of Black women, but also a historian of crime and confinement. And so as a historian of confinement, Palestine sits with me for a number of reasons. But when we look at history, we have to ask ourselves, what is it? What is history? And history is the chronological record of events, often significant events, often including an explanation of their causes. It's a branch of knowledge that records and explains past events. Historians engage the archive, old dusty papers and books that include census records, birth, death, marriage records, deeds, wills, estate documents, letters, diaries. But we're just not limited to dusty old books and papers. We also engage material culture, clothing, medicine bottles, coffee makers, old advertisements, And all of these things help us to develop an understanding of a historical moment, an era, a figure, um, or an event. And it's important to note that history constantly evolves. Each time we find new evidence in an archive or even an archaeological site, that evidence helps us to better understand, with proof, what actually occurred in the past and how it potentially influenced the events that followed. Memory is slightly different. History and memory are not necessarily the same things. Memory, especially collective memory, is how a society remembers or interprets past events and their significance. That collective memory of a community or society is often shaped by cultural, social, and political factors. And it often centers on the social environment of memory and really asks how individual stories about the past interact with existing narratives of what happened or how we memorialize what took place. And sometimes when it comes to memory, sometimes it's more about the act of remembering rather than the actual memory itself. And it's easy to see these contrasts between history and memory in American society, and we face them daily, right? Take, for example, the Civil War. Dun, dun, dun. In the late 19th century, you have Southern groups and former Confederate generals that came together and crafted tenets of what we today call the Lost Cause. The term was coined in 1866. And that narrative romanticized the war, the South's goals, and even mythologized the Old South. And you can see that at play if anybody on the call has ever seen things like Gone with the Wind, this big dress and ball gown idea of what the South actually was. But even in 2024, you can still hear these tenets in action, even though they were created in the late 19th, early 20th century. You can still see this type of memory and its root in society, even though we have archival evidence to the contrary. We still have conversations about the Civil War being caused by states' rights, even though we know it was slavery. We still have conversations about enslaved people, this myth that enslaved people were faithful to enslavers. And you can hear similar language in the current curriculum debates in Florida. But even though we have sometimes this disconnect between history and memory can also work in tandem in the pursuit of truth for community and community. Professor David Blight of Yale University describes the differences between history and memory as follows. History can be read by or belong to everyone. It is more relative, contingent on place, chronology, and scale. If history is shared and secular, memory is often treated as a sacred set of absolute meanings and stories, as a community's heritage or identity. Memory is often owned. History is interpreted. Memory is passed down through generations. History is revised. Memory often coalesces in objects, sites, and monuments. History seeks to understand contexts in all their complexity. History asserts the authority of academic training and canons of evidence. There's that word again. Memory carries the often more immediate authority of community membership and experience. Although history and memory can support state-sanctioned or dominant historical narratives, owning our memory and revising history when we have evidence of truth changes our approach to injustice. We met two powerful individuals this week. And Bayana Abu Sinene, her talk on Monday shed light on the genocide that's taking place from a Palestinian perspective. She shared with us the horrors and realities of what's happening there, specifically the gender violence that occurs as homes and other domestic sites and reproductive spaces, clinics, birthing centers, hospitals are targeted for destruction, effectively blocking not only Palestinian life and existence, but reproduction as well. But one of her statements that genuinely struck me while was that while the body count rises daily, the destruction of the Palestinian archive adds to that horror, adds to that genocide. Remember, I said earlier that historians understand and record, understand and interpret history using evidence. The destruction of vital records, birth, death, marriage records, is a way to alter the historical record and eliminate people from the historical narrative. The body count is rising, and the history and record of the people birthing, living, loving, and remembering are also erased. Malka Bird of Jewish Voices of Peace joined us last evening and shared her journey as a Jewish girl growing into a woman and how she began questioning the collective narrative and collective memory she was raised with. Her questions led her to fight against injustices anywhere she found them, particularly for the Palestinian people. Malka's story and her labor are not only inspiring, but also serve as a testimony to the common ground and solidarity we can find when we challenge collective memory, but also when we're bold enough to reconsider and redefine those memories with historical evidence and a desire to ensure that humans, no matter where they may be, have the ability to thrive. Understanding history and memory and shared struggles creates solidarity in these dark times and propels us to push forward. For example, Black, Indigenous, and Palestinians have recognized affinities and have offered mutual solidarity for decades, even dating back to the early days of the civil rights movements and the Black and Indigenous power movements of the 1960s. The gentleman that you see in the top corner there is Fred Hampton. And leaders such as Fred Hampton saw Palestinians as part of a global opposition to racism, imperialism, and predatory capitalism. And if you aren't familiar with Fred Hampton, he was the chairman of the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party. And while in his early 20s, he formed the city's first Rainbow Coalition, which was a multiracial coalition that pooled its resources together to assist low-income families in Chicago. And he bridged gaps because it was about solidarity between whites, between Black people, between Puerto Ricans, with the goal of fighting oppression, with the goal of liberation. And he was assassinated December 4th, 1969, by the Chicago Police Department as he laid in bed with his pregnant wife. And he was 21 at the time of his assassination. But Black leaders have also been concerned by Israel's discrimination against Jews of African descent, those from Ethiopia and other nations, as well as harsh treatment of African asylum seekers. But the synergy between African Americans and Palestinians has been reinvigorated recently as activists in America and Palestine recognize those organic ties. And this is especially true of efforts to end militarized policing, which has been fostered by Israel's active training of American law enforcement. And this is something that both of our speakers touched on Monday and Tuesday. Palestinians were the first to express solidarity with demonstrators in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014, offering them guidance on how to cope with tear gas and other repressive police tactics. Palestinians were also present at the Standing Rock protest in 2016 against the Dakota Access Pipeline. And at the end of the day, the quest for justice and equal rights for all human beings, regardless of color or creed, are the overarching principles in these connected struggles. There is no doubt that engaging in social justice work is heavy, but understanding and standing in solidarity with those who are oppressed is a constant in a world that's plagued with violence and imperialism. Solidarity is necessary at home and abroad to engage the work and ensure a truthful historical narrative that honors collective memory, but stands without silence and erasure in the narrative and in the archive. Although our histories may be rife with trauma, public history and memory are spaces to engage in truth and reconciliation, as well as to set out with the work of healing. And so I'll close with, again, Audre Lorde: caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. So with that said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we can jump into our discussion. So just as a reminder, tonight is a bit different. You do not have to wait to post your questions. Post them and join in the conversation with us. Excuse me. I will say, and just want to be of a reminder, that this is a safe space, this is a respectful space, and this is a space for engagement and solidarity. And so we welcome questions, we welcome discussion, we welcome comments and conversation. But those comments, conversation, we will consistently remain respectful of one another and engage together in solidarity. So with that being said, Teigha, Mira, are you ready?
Always ready.
All right. Okay, so
I cannot say that I'm always ready.
that's okay.
As many of you have witnessed.
But you're here, and that's what matters.
But I try my best.
So I want to throw out just a couple of questions to get us started, and then we can let the conversation flow. And especially since we are wrapping up such a wonderful week, and these ideas behind memory and history, and how we engage with it, but also how it engages with us. And so, my first question for my crew is: how do collective memory and history contribute towards conceptions of self and a national identity? That's a big question.
It is.
I was thinking very much about my contribution to this discussion, and as I really have insisted on centering the voices of Palestinians in this night school, I decided to read poems in both Arabic and English, and also play some music from Palestine to kind of also mind and nurture our inner souls and our a sense of collective solidarity through the power of art and creativity, because we have done, and from my part, a lot of theorizing, but also we need to do solidarity in feeling and I hope that you join me in feeling all the feels in my interjections. So, Tia, go ahead, and then I will make you all cry.
Sure. I don't want to cry, but that's okay. I'll try not to. I think it's interesting. It's a really profound question to ask because I think we often think that the excess of either memory or the excess of history is really what shapes the self. And I know my own experience as marginalized, fringe, occupying femme is that it was the lack of history to go with the abundance of memory um, that really kind of helped me identify who it is that I am and what stories I need to find and what narratives I need to tell and the things that I need to amplify. So shifting that collective memory towards what we identify as history, specifically if we're from a culture or a nation that is based in oral traditions. And I think that there's a lot of really cool and profound scholarship that I'm trying to play around with and figure out that isn't alphabetic text, but thinking about how we can digitize or how we can create films or music and different ways in which to create a communal history or public history that is able to withstand the almost, I guess, happenstance oppression that groups will continue to face throughout time. And I think that approach to history is really just doing a lot of important work to dismantle structures of oppression by figuring out sites that cannot be co-opted in history, that cannot be destroyed. Is something that, yeah, I think helped build self and national identity for a lot, including myself.
Mira, were you gonna say something? Okay, you're muted.
I'm going to start with a poem by Naomi Shihab Nye called Jerusalem. I'm going to first read it in English and then in Arabic. And it touches on this imagined idea of nationhood and history, and a kind of a linear history that somebody can claim, and another kind of history that is more asymmetrical, outside and inside of time, rather than one following Eurocentric linearity, which is always going towards progress and towards whiteness. So if you don't mind, Jerusalem, a trilingual poem by Naomi Shihab Nye. I am not interested in who suffered the most. I'm interested in people getting over it. Once, when my father was a boy, a stone hit him on the head. Hair would never grow there. Our fingers found the tender spot and its riddle. The boy who has fallen stands up. A bucket of pears in his mother's doorway welcomes him home. The pears are not crying. Later, his friend who threw the stone says he was aiming at a bird, and my father starts growing wings. Each carries a tender spot, something our lives forgot to give us. A man builds a house and says, I'm a native now. A woman speaks to a tree in place of her son, and olives come. A child's poem says, I don't like wars. They end up with monuments. He's painting a bird with wings wide enough to cover 2 roofs at once. Why are we so monumentally slow? Soldiers stock a pharmacy, big guns, little pills. If you tilt your head slightly, it's ridiculous. There's a place in my brain where hate won't grow. I touch its riddle, wind and seeds. Something pokes us as we sleep. It's late, but everything comes next. القدس شعر نعومي شهاب ناي ترجمة ابتسام بركات. لا يعنيني معرفة ما معاناته فاقت معاناة الآخر. أنا معنية بأن يتغلب الناس على المعاناة. ذات مرة حين كان أبي صبياً جرح رأسه بضربة حجر ولم ينبت الشعر في مكان الجرح. أصابعنا عثرت على تلك الندبة في رأسه وعلى لغزها. الولد الذي وقع تمكن من الوقوف ثانية، والآن دلو مليء بفاكهة الإجاص على مدخل بيت أمه يرحب بعودته. الإجاص لا يبكي. صديقه الذي شج رأسه بالحجر قال أنه كان يقصد اصطياد عصفور، فبدأت تنمو أجنحة عصفور لوالدي. كلنا يحمل ندبة لشيء ما. نسيت الحياة أن تمنحنا إياه. رجل يعمر منزلاً ويقول الآن صرت من السكان الأصليين. امرأة تتحدث مع شجرة ترى فيها ابنها الغائب، فتأتي الشجرة بثمر الزيتون. قصيدة طفل تقول أنا لا أحب الحروب. الحروب تنتهي بأنصاب تذكارية للموتى. ويرسم طائراً بأجنحة عريضة جداً بحجم سقف لمنزلين معاً. لماذا هذا البطء العظيم فينا؟ جنود يتربصون بصيدلية، أسلحة كبيرة، أدوية صغيرة. إذا حنيت رأسك بعد الشيء سيبدو الأمر تافها. وفي عقلي مكان لا ينمو فيه الكره. المسلغزة، ريح وبذور، شيء ما يخزينا في منامنا. الوقت متأخر الآن، ولكن بقية كل شيء تتبع. Thank you. شكرا.
Thank you. Can you share, would you be willing to share that with when we release our resources?
Sure, yeah, certainly.
Perfect. Beautiful. We have a related question. How do you navigate engaging with people that refuse to acknowledge the history and collective memory of the Palestinian people because they've been immersed in a collective memory that is inconsistent and are experiencing their own trauma?
Go ahead, Dr. Fletcher. You want to take us away?
It's a good question, because we tend to, as historians, we tend to see these types of engagements around a lot of different subjects. And I gave the example of just, I mean, every day in the US with the Civil War, there are folks who just do not want to hear anything contrary to the collective memory that they choose to embrace. And so in my work as a historian, I just keep pushing. I keep pushing the buttons. I keep doing the work, doing the research, finding that evidence, sharing that evidence, rethinking, revising the historical narrative. And by the same token, you're just going to have individuals who just do not want to engage in the conversation. Full stop. And so you can't, what's the old saying? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. It's facts. And there's always going to be some sort of push and pull, but what we can do, not just as people in the academy, but just as a community, is to encourage folks to at least attempt to have an open mind, to would be willing to engage, even if they don't necessarily understand it or want to hear it, but not to give up on those who push back.
Amen. I think doing social justice work or liberatory work in any instance means that you're gonna run into people who are engaging in too much conflation of the two. Taking memory as history or taking history as memory when it's kind of a both and situation, which is what RGSS is. It's not either or. We don't do dichotomies. And I think we have to remember that. I think we're in a time historically or societally that's really interesting because we have the capacity to assist in facilitating unlearning or to facilitate exposure or engagement with new thoughts and ideas that a lot of people have never been exposed to or had to consider. And I think there people who are social justice inclined forget how traumatizing or harmful it is to realize that everything that you thought was true about a certain thing is no longer true. And so people are going to resist that. That's nature. If somebody told me Beyonce wasn't the greatest in the world and had receipts, it would devastate me, right? Like I would be so overcome. So I think there's something in being patient, as well as gentle. I know things that other people don't know that I've known for a long time, but if I'm telling them and it's the first time they've heard it, I've had the time to process it and come to terms with it and investigate and interrogate. And I don't think we often give people the time or the space to do that, or based on whatever the memory is, we shut it down as though they were looking at history, as though they understood how these separations or configurations and intertwining works, when that's what really smart, intelligent people do, and leaders. So I think it's important to give space, give grace, and understand that we know what it means to maybe be humane, but other people who are patriotic or don't understand why we can't be colorblind, a lot of our work is destroying every truth that a person knows. And so we have to be conscious and empathetic of that fact and give people a soft place to fall and a community that will surround them later on. So my thoughts.
Not what you say, it's how you say it.
Mm-hmm.
The delivery is important. Absolutely.
I think for me, this is where scholarship and personal testimony kind of coalesce. I'm a literary historian. I study the archives, and unfortunately, I was born in 1982, the year that Israel invaded Beirut and bombed Lebanon, Beirut up for 3 months. And I know that the first thing that the IDF did was go to the PLO's offices in Burj Al and burn all the archives of the Palestinians. This is collective memory from my perspective as an Arab person who has experienced firsthand the kind of undoing that Israel inflicts on Arab people. Lebanon has undergone so many, has seen many instances where sheltering women and children, sheltering in the UN would be bombed. One of the memories that would never ever leave my consciousness is the 1996, I'm sorry, I was not born in 1966, although I show it. In 1996, we saw very, very much similar pictures of bodies of children dismembered in Qana, the massacre of Qana, and which happened in the south of Lebanon. And these are irrevocable moments for someone who comes from the region. In 2006, during the war, the July War, my sister and my mom and I were this is when Israel leveled all the infrastructure of Lebanon, sieged Lebanon, and bombed all its points of borders. It was really by just it was a matter of time. We were 5 minutes away from crossing a bridge that got bombed. So we were on the way, and it was just a matter of time. And at one point we heard it was very, very loud, and we saw people telling us to go back. And then we realized that if things did not align this way, I would have been one of the nameless people who are sacrificed. So I think this is my truth and the experience of Arabs and my way of engaging with people who refuse to acknowledge that there is a counter memory that is as political and as worthy of being studied, not romantically, not romanticizing. We are not romanticizing Palestinian memory or Arab memory, but there is another memory that is worth excavating and politicizing as well.
Thank you for that, for sure. We have another question. Can you speak to the urgency that requires you all as public intellectuals and women of color to conduct this night school in the face of resistance and vulnerability, and the necessity of this liberatory pedagogy and practice that you have so effectively demonstrated? Excuse me. You want me to reread it?
Who do you want to?
Yeah, go ahead, dear.
Can you speak to the urgency that?
Oh, you don't have to repeat.
I don't have to. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just didn't know who was talking first. But
okay, I thought you wanted me to repeat it.
Oh, we're good. Yeah, I think there's a constant struggle to be considered a community-based scholar or a scholar for the community, and it's not seen as within our responsibilities as scholar activists. It's and in addition to, and that's hard, especially with the emotional labor that women of color already have to do for students of color and people of divergent sexualities at a PWI. It is what it is. So our embodiment means a safe space, and so people take that, I think, positionality literally, and I welcome it. There's no burden here. But I think that when we only see ourselves kind of educating within the confines of the ivory tower that we occupy, I think Butler is a fabulous institution with the best students I've ever met and really supportive administrator and my favorite colleagues I've ever had, but it's still an ivory tower. Like, I don't want to romanticize the idea that it isn't what it is. I think understanding and coming to terms with the way in which the university narrative articulated the genocide in Gaza was a really monumental moment in the active erasure of the collective of 40 RGSS affiliate faculty not being able to publish their statement on the website was also another moment of like, oh, wait, we're still in this space. Like, we still have to engage in this guerrilla dispensement. We have to have community in order to address the bureaucratic violence that we experience in the university. If we don't have people on the outside to come in and help us on the inside, it's really hard. And so for me, that's really what necessitated wanting to reach out. My colleague Mira texted myself and our program director, even though she's on fellowship, and was like, "Where's our statement? We're not gonna stay silent, and we're not gonna be cowards. We're gonna say something." And me and TC took this like, "What? We're not being cowards. We just didn't know." And like we were talking about yesterday, like, is this my work? I'm not Palestinian. I'm not an Arab person. So I don't really know how to write this, but in writing it and drafting it in community, I think we forget about how those pieces of work are invigorating and really work that matters when you're able to, there's a reciprocation between that. And then the text to reach out to both of um our fellow co-hosts was when they cut off the internet and they cut off the water and nobody could speak there. So then it's like, if not them, then who? And that means then us. And so I think that is really what is necessary, maybe a fearlessness. I think, and since this is from Cherry Jet, I'm going to be completely honest. I was in class today and it was critical race theory, and I was talking to my students. If you're here, shout out critical race theory class. But we were talking about the difference between DEI and RGSS and things like the hub and spaces like that. RGSS is not about inclusion, it's about liberation and justice. That's what we're looking for. We want to free people. We want people to be able to freely exist and occupy any space. DEI is focused on inclusion. All of them, I think, are important and serve different functions. But there's things like this night school that free up this intellectual community of women of color scholars that is in Indianapolis but hasn't reached out, or frees up people within the community to be seen as intellectuals, whether they have a PhD or a master's degree or went to college at all. We all have community-based literacies and intellect and understanding of how systems work that needs to be celebrated and empowered. And that celebration and empowerment is the liberation. And so when we demystify the idea that to be smart enough to speak, you have to have this, or to be able to go to a protest, you have to have voted for whoever, vote for, or you have to have donated to UNICEF. No, you just go, like, you just take the space. You just move your body, occupy. Embodied resistance is really important. So I think that's kind of where the liberatory pedagogy that I use comes from. But I'd love to hear from my co-host and fierce allies and accomplices in this from
I completely agree with you. I think that, and you, again, one of my favorite humans, Audre Lorde, and you shared this quote yesterday. I'm not free while any woman is unfree, even when her shackles are very different from my own. When we think about community, yes, there's a campus community, there's an academic community, but communities take various shapes and forms, and they have varying members, and their compositions can change rapidly. But beyond the formal classroom, the world in and of itself is a classroom. And being able to engage, you don't have to be a PhD bearing individual to be in pursuit of liberation. We all should be in pursuit of liberation. And so understanding that while I may sit in an ivory tower and engage in this work in these spaces, there's boots on the ground work that's being done every day in every corner of every space on this planet for some sort of liberation from something. And we can all learn from one another if we're open enough to being able to do that, because it's a shared authority. We don't know everything, right? We may have shared experiences, but none of us are monolithic. And so that is the urgency for me. I don't know everything. I know that there are varying forms of confinement that I experience as a Black woman in these United States. And while they may not look the same as another woman of color in the same country, it may, whether they're overseas, it doesn't make a difference, but I should want that same type of liberation for her as I want for myself. And so to be able to learn, to be able to grow as an individual, whether it's in a formal classroom or an informal classroom, is at the root of my urgency to do this type of work.
I have really, of course, I have thought a lot about that, about the risk that we take, and vulnerability is a very, very raw place to be in, especially as a woman of color. First, I want to say, Terry Jett, I love you very much on air in front of everyone. And
Me
I'm
too.
very excited for you, but also heartbroken. I love you, and I'm gonna send you lots of kisses. All right. During that, publicly, I think there are two issues that we have to navigate. First, there is this binary, this opposition in academia that community-based work, public scholarship is kind of less than the rigorous work that writing a book or publishing a peer-reviewed article in gender. We don't see awards for professors that do public work, public scholarship. The university is going to reward, and we know our tenure processes. The university is not going to reward this work, because tenure is very, very quantifiable about the number of publications we need to have and in scholarly spots. So this is kind of, in a way, complementary, seen as complementary, something that you do in your free time, but it's not something that you can just form your scholar activist persona around. So structurally, it's also, taking a risk that, I am supposed to be working on my book, but I am also dedicating a lot of time for my activist work, because this is also my scholarship. This is the same. This is the same agenda that I have in the classroom and in my scholarship. So it's not something like that is complementary that I wear. And this is also comes to the other risk that we are at a point of extreme censorship. We see people being penalized severely for taking an ethical stance. And yes, of course, as people need to kind of weigh in their choices, and nobody knows what anybody else is going through. But for me, the work of liberation is not something to put on my CV for career advancement, which is sadly something very, very common, especially in academia. Post George Floyd, there was this influx of jobs and webinars and seminars, all revolving around racial justice, and many people found in this a career opportunity. This is not the case for the work we do. We think liberation, we act liberation, and we teach liberation. And at the end of the day, no matter what my discomfort is going to be, if if I get backlash, it's nothing compared to what my kin, the Palestinians, are going through right now. It's not even it's not something to even linger on when speaking up is for life. We're speaking up for the right of life and living. Hope this
Absolutely.
works.
Here's a related question. Because we just talked about the labor, the weight, and the emotional labor, not just the physical, but the emotional labor that comes with doing this work. How do you engage in self-care while doing this work of social justice? What's your self-care routine? How do you take care of you?
So I do hard breaks. So if we're on winter break or we're on summer break, I refuse to be exploited and I break. I have a very great out of the office email, I think, but yeah, I make sure to detach for a while, and I will say it's a catch-22 because it sucks when you come back and you have to catch up on all that work, but it is you're able to do it, I think, in a better way because you took time to rest. So I definitely think that is an important part of my self-care. I think we're always taught to grind and hustle and do all these things, and yeah, I just refuse. But that comes with its privileges. I worked real fucking hard for a long time to get to the point where I could kind of dictate my time in that way. Since we're just on a Terry Jet train, a palooza, my self care is in community with my colleagues and my friends and maintaining those relationships outside of discussions of oppression. So Dr. Jet and I go to the movies like once a month at the least. And most of the time we don't talk about work at all. We just watch a movie and then go home, and it's like Black women doing Black women things. We just go to the movies. I went to visit Mira. We went on a tour and I was like, hey, this is a little sad. Like, let's have a good time. And we ate delicious Ethiopian food and had a ball and watched a show that was recommended by Dr. Savage, that I highly recommend to all people. And I can't think of the name right now. But finding those people that you can be in community with for the work as well as for your personhood is super important. I have a home downtown with Dr. Carney that I go over for coffee and chat, making sure that your relationships are not only defined by the work. I think it is really important and a big part of my self-care. And then I'm a water-based scholar of water literacy. So water is extremely healing to me. Being in, by, with bodies of water as a Afro-Polynesian person is home to me. So you spend a lot of time in the water, spend a lot of time dancing with my husband partner in the kitchen. Just little daily like nuggets of joy that I can find. I'm also a pleasure activist, so most of the stuff I do is happy and joyful and liberating, but self-care, I think, is very situation specific. It's kind of like coping skills that you come up with your therapist. And so I try to, my self-care is in community. And I think that speaks to our scholarship and positionality as scholar activists, that without the people who sustain us in the work, we might not be interested in liberation the way that we are. So.
Well, I would like to say that in line, in the spirit of how Audre Lorde's call for self-help has been monetized and trivialized by middle-class white women, I would like to insert a GoFundMe link so that you, my colleagues, can fund my self-care of, I will decide what to do with it. No, joking. This is joking aside. I'm on fellowship this year. I am learning how to sew. It's humbling. It's frustrating. Everybody had finished the projects that we started in the summer and have finished like 5 projects, and I'm still on the same first project. But it's a sense of being in community outside of the kind of the performativity that academia kind of imposes on us. And yeah, that's my self-care and swimming.
My self-care is just trying to make time for me to do nothing. There is a wonderful sister, powerful sister by the name of Trisha Hersey, and she has a book. I recommend it to anybody who is on the call right now. It is called Rest is Resistance, a Manifesto. And you can follow on Instagram and TikTok. The handle is the Nap Ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sounds funny, my ministry is napping, but when we talk about grind culture and we're constantly on the go, especially when we are engaged in not only physical labor, but this oppressive grip of emotional labor. Sometimes one of the best ways to push back against oppressive forces is to just sit down and take your rest. And sometimes it's very hard for us to do that, especially those who are just entrenched in American culture, because this is what we do. But to sit down and to look at the wall, because that's what you want to do. It's okay, but it also rejuvenates you so that you can go back out and do the work that we do. And so I can't swim, so I'm not swimming. I will get in the water and float. But sometimes for me, it's just the piece of just being, especially when you look at historically, a lot of the oppressive forces that have come against people of color, especially Black women, there are many times when we just shouldn't have made it, but we're still here. And so we need to take that time to simply rest. And that in and of itself is a revolutionary act.
For anybody who doesn't know, I teach that book in our Resistance for Social Change class. So obviously we're on the same page.
Absolutely. And it'll be in the resources because it's highly recommended. We don't have any other questions. If you have questions before our time is up, drop them in the Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
I have one other question that I'll throw out there for the 3 of us. What resources, your top resource, I would say, would you recommend for those who are stepping out on this learning journey? What would be your top resource?
I recommend, because I'm a literary person, to follow the Palestinian Festival of Literature. It's an organization. It happens. There's a festival that happens every year in the West Bank, and Palestinian poets and writers usually host poets and writers from from all over the world, and of course, people who are in solidarity with Palestinians. And the work that this organization does has been a source of such solace for me, and inspiration. And I will include it in the resources we're gonna send out.
Can I have two? I'm taking two. I recommend anybody interested in starting this journey, follow Butler's SJP on Instagram. They're the organization. I don't know who's in charge of it. I know Dr. Myerscough is the advisor, but who the chapter leaders are, I have no idea. But they give me so much information that's easy to use. I know when things are going on in the community and when I can show up. Also, the Socialist Liberation Party here, if you just follow them, you don't have to join. These are people who are boots on the ground, and they will let you know when boots will be on the ground and what those boots will be doing. And so it's good to just have like a running ticker of, if I have a couple hours free one day, I might pop over and do this, or here's a form letter to send to my congressman, and I always try to zazz those up a little bit. So I definitely using social media to follow independent grassroots organizations is where it's going to be at, and I will provide some links for that. And then I just have two books: Freedom is a Constant Struggle, Angela Davis. It's going to be a powerful piece to think about coalition building, which I think is really important. The other one is Emergent Strategies by Adrienne Mary Brown, to think about how change doesn't come from one mass event or one cataclysmic act of war, but it is through small, mundane, inconsequential, conscious changes that you make, that over time things change. So you don't start by starting your own organization. You start by showing up. You start by writing a letter to a person in power that needs to hear your opinion because they work for you. Like, these are the steps to getting the agency to be able to occupy this space and mobilize resistance. And I think she's just a fabulously easy writer to read, and is really clear and gives us the idea of radical imagining. So one of the favorite things that she says is, like, we are all living in someone's imagination. The patriarchy, capitalism, colonization, somebody dreamed it up and then deployed it out. What happens when people who are committed to liberation start to imagine things? And that's really helpful for me to be hopeful in the future. And so I do a lot of work with her stuff and mindfulness. So yeah.
Awesome. So I have two. Um, locally, an awesome organization for you to follow here in Indianapolis is the Indianapolis Liberation Center. It is a wealth of knowledge for issues that are occurring here in town, but also perspectives on global issues, Palestine included, but decolonization work, decolonization efforts, and it's a local space to glean information. The book that I will recommend is one of my favorite books ever. Is The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. So if you've never read James Baldwin, let's change that today. But it's nonfiction. It's his story of growing up, his earlier life in Harlem, in New York, but also really looks at the perils and the results and the consequences of oppression and racial injustice. And so it's a set of essays, but they're nonfiction, and I strongly recommend it. We do have a comment in the Q&A, not a question. That's totally fine. SJP is hosting a Call Your Senator event in the DC room 004 in Atherton on Monday, February 5th from 11 to 5. And they're hosting another major event on Thursday, April 18th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. It's currently titled, Where Do We Begin? So we can definitely share that information out when we share our resources for the event, and continue to share it as we move even closer to that April date as well. Well, Dr. VanHester, I'm going to turn it over to you to close us out.
Closing. Thank you so much, everybody who participated. I gave SJP that shout out. Look at how on top of it they are. They're everywhere. So yeah, support them. I think I want to close this night school kind of just in saying that it's really kind of important for us to realize that nothing that happens with this war in Gaza is just circumstantial or coincidental. Everything is calculated. Every form of oppression that we see, whether it's book banning, drag queens in libraries, all of it is calculated. I think sometimes people who are committed and care about social justice work and movements think that, you know, the alt-right and conservatives aren't doing anything. No, they are mobilized, they are organized, they are in the systems, they're in positions of power. And so it's time for us to coalesce. It's time for us to build these coalitions. If you are a student at Butler or a community member and you need support, please feel free to reach out to RGSS. That's what we're here for, to help facilitate these grassroots things. Fred Hampton was 21. I'm 33, and I might be the youngest person on this Zoom meeting that we're in right now. So it is our Butler students, our fabulous bulldogs that are bodies in the streets, that we are trying to equip with the skills that they need to understand that you have the power to demand the change that you want. We are here to teach you and to support you and uplift you and amplify your work, and are committed to being the people that we needed when we were in your position but didn't have. So know that we are here to support you. Please let us know your experiences in the night school. We will give you some upcoming RGSS events to look out for, a lot of which are at the Can Cinemas downtown, which has the best popcorn around. Just gonna say that. But thank you in solidarity and resistance. Thank you so much to Dr. Fletcher and Dr. Assaf Kafantaris for their unparalleled intellect and profound sisterhood. I love you both dearly, and thank you for participating. I hope everybody has a wonderful evening.
Good night.
Good night.